Well, good afternoon, Riverland College and Long Prairie Gray Eagle. This is a little bit of a late video. Usually I'm getting them up, close to around the day that I'm promising you. Because if we're meeting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, well, I got to get the videos up Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And but truth be told, we're running out of nice weather. And I don't have many more opportunities to visit my mom. So on Friday, when I got done dismissing my classical mythology class, I whipped down to my hometown of Anoka and picked her up. It's like stealing a grandma. And we have a little place along the Rum River where we sit. And she's 91 and a half, and that's getting up there. It can't go on forever. It can't even go on much longer. I am her favorite son, her only son, but her favorite nonetheless. So, bring you up to speed. Let me just do pretty much the compliment material that I did this past Friday. And I want to tell you something to get us going. The last of my equipment came, this shotgun mic. And I'm going to have fun with this as I try to make better and better videos for you. Classical mythology got grumpy with me because I promised them that I would unbox everything in front of them. And pretty much that's how it went, as the CARES Act funds came in and the stuff that Riverland College got me to make this happen, technology-wise. But I had to open it because I had to see it. I wanted to mess around with it. I love gadgets. But we didn't have an unboxing in classical mythology the other day, but we had a boxing up of something, which were dinosaurs that I sent to Valerie's little boy Pete. And I sure hope that those dinosaurs made him happy. Might follow up with a couple more later now that I got the address. And I'll say what I said to my mythology lecture. Putting those dinosaurs in that box, knowing that they were going to a little boy, a little 6-year-old boy that I may never get to meet, in Medford, Minnesota, where I have never been, seems to me like the most important thing I did in the entire pandemic. I mean, period. It just seemed important. And I'll say to you what I said to my morning captive charges Friday, my 9, my 10, and my noon. When you're young, one of your mistaken thoughts is that, well, it's not a mistaken thought to want to be great someday at something. But my theory about greatness was that it's not achieved through the doing of great deeds, but through the doing of just a lot of little small things right and well, as you try to live a purposeful life, which is what I'm trying to do. So enough talk about that. I had another thought there. Anyway, it's not important. I want to try to get you interested in something today that doesn't have that much to do with English, but it sure has an awful lot to do with life. And that's a word you've probably never heard of before, and it's called phonology, believe it or not. And I am kind of an amateur phonologist, and I'll bet you are too. And there's a fantastic show that's available to you, at least online, on Tuesday mornings by the greatest phonologist in Minnesota. And I'll tell you what phonology is in a minute, and I'll tell you about him, try to get you interested in him. Also, there's big news, you guys. An American poet won the Nobel Prize in Literature this week. And her name is Louise Gluck. And she deserves it because she's a genius. And I cannot tell you how many years I've stood in classrooms trying to predict the Nobel Prize, then being embarrassed because I didn't even know who the writer was, and being grumpy year after year after year, seriously grumpy that it's seldom an American, almost never. And then when it finally was an American 3-4 years ago, when they picked Bob Dylan, I was just confused. Really? Really? You picked Bob Dylan instead of William Murray and Robert Hass, Louise Gluck? So I gotta be happy about this because it went to an American. And the only thing I'm grumpy about is that I wanted to host her a few years ago, and I called Eliza Fisher in California, who's the big rep at the Barclay Agency, and she said something along the lines of, oh Jeff, you don't want to host Louise. It'll be the worst 2 days of your life. She's not a happy traveler. She'll drive you nuts. And I'm like, okay, because you sometimes let the reps, help you make the decisions. Well, now I'm feeling a little ripped off because it means I could have been able to brag, hey, I hosted a Nobel Laureate. And I didn't. It's not about my prestige. It's about the prestige of the series. And I'll have more news for you on the poetry reading that we're kicking semester off on November 12th. We'll keep that till next week. So I want to talk about phonology. I'm going to give you a very brief poem by Louise Gluck. And then we're going to keep our two threads going. The thread of rhetoric, we're studying rhetoric, and we're also studying prose style. And I know 3 is the magic number, but I keep coming up with 2 things, feeling a little empty-handed. I want to make a comment on ungrounded claims, and I want to sort of mash that up with the absolute necessity of understanding causal reasoning, cause-effect reasoning. You're going to have about a week to write a persuasive paper. And I'll have that be due this week, Friday night. So it's got to hit that Dropbox. And I want to head you off at the pass on a couple of things before you start thinking about writing that paper. Then I'd like to give you a little bit of a demonstration of what figurative language looks like in the hands of our greatest genius, and that's Shakespeare. So I ended class on Friday. I wanted to get to Richard Landa, but that'll have to keep till tomorrow. And I ended class by just showing, and I'm going to end it here today, by showing you one phenomenal speech that occurs in, I think, scene 2 of Act 3 of Julius Caesar. And it's a little bit longer. I'm just simply going to show it to you, and I'm going to read it. And we don't have to identify every example of the figura that occurs in it, but you can't swing a cat in that speech without hitting a metaphor. And that's where we left off this past Wednesday. So we'll get to Julius Caesar in a minute. And, well, yeah, let's start with the poem. What the heck? Here's Louise Gluck. We don't have to do it in the order I said, right? Louise Gluck. This is a prose poem. In other words, it's not in verse. Theory of memory. Long, long ago, before I was a tormented artist, afflicted with longing, yet incapable of forming durable attachments, long before this, I was a glorious ruler, uniting all of a divided country. So I was told by the famous fortune teller, who examined my palm. Great things, she said, are ahead of you, or perhaps behind you. It's difficult to be sure. And yet, she added, what is the difference? Right now you were a child, holding hands with a fortune teller. All the rest is hypothesis and dream. She can really, she's a genius. I don't use that word a lot either. We throw it around a lot. He's a genius, she's a genius, but Louise Gluck is, and she deserves the Nobel Prize, and I wonder what she'll do with the $1.1 million that she'll get with that. It's just that time of the year. Nobel Peace Prize, Chemistry Prize for Chemistry, Prize for Medicine, and it went to an American this year. Isn't that a remarkable thing? Okay, I want to run a little documentary that I made Friday morning actually, when thousands of blackbirds descended on my property. It's only about 40 seconds long. But here's the main thing I want to put before you. Phonology, again, a word you probably haven't heard before. Phonology is the study of the points of interaction, the relationship between nature, between everything in nature, insects, animals, trees, fauna, everything in every ecosystem, nature, weather, and time, right? Across time. So if you've ever, just for example, if you've ever observed the coming, whoa, that window got blown open, I think it's okay. If you've ever observed the timing of certain birds coming and going, like loons or bluebirds or ducks or geese, you're possibly a phonologist. If you've ever noticed that purple asters are blooming in prairies in early October, or evening goldenrod, you're possibly a phonologist. If you've ever noticed that 1 minute the telephone lines are clear, and then the next thing birds are just lined up on the telephone wires getting the head out of here, it's possibly you're interested in phonology. We love our weather. We love looking at our trees and our lakes and our birds and our sky and the elements. And I know you're exactly the same. And I hope you get in your water someday. But if you, take a look at this. These birds, you know this too. You've seen it. It's the time of the year where crows, blackbirds congregate and in huge groups and fly through the air. And sometimes, they stop and rest, and then they'll take off in a cloud. And if you see at the end of this little stretch of video, they're flowing like a river of birds. And I cannot overstate how much I get excited about stuff like this. And if you want to keep your sense of wonder going, one of the ways of doing it is just getting outside more. We have to get out of our houses no matter what the weather's doing, and enjoy what God has dreamed for us outside. Now, there's a guy named Lattimore. What's his name? Oh, Richard Lattimore? No. John Latimer. Sorry, blanked out. Now, it's out of reach for you, but there's fantastic public radio in the northeast quadrant of Minnesota with a radio station called KAXE. And John is a phonologist, and he has a show every Tuesday morning. You could listen to it online, or you could listen to it in the archive. That's KAXE Community Radio. I'm not talking about classical music here. I'm talking about fantastic contemporary music all day long. You could stream it if you want. I don't know, the Flaming Lips, Wilco, Andrew Bird, music like that. And John has a show that is the most soothing, relaxing, satisfying 10 minutes anywhere. And I got on the show several times with questions. I saw a salamander going up a hill over here on December 8th. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing, little guy? And John could speak to that. He takes letters from all over the state as people report the timing of things that are happening around them and where they live. And John is proof that you do not need to have an advanced degree to be an expert in something. John Latimer is actually a mailman. He's been delivering mail for decades up around Grand Rapids area. And at the same time, the dude speaks at conferences. I've heard him. He's been featured in the New York Times too. You could Google that. It's been a few years, but he's just a big deal, and he's just a complete sweetheart. And we've just got so many, things are going so badly right now in the world, and we must never forget that the world is always full of just wonderful, wonderful, sweethearted, great-hearted people. And I hope you check that out. And I think I'll change out my setting for the next one here. I just saw an eagle. So, I don't know if this will work or not. I'm just trying a different scene. I wanted you to meet my ducks, but I got too close to them, and they went in their little house. So I can only hope that they come back. I got two giant ducks, and they're in the straw now. That's what I got my wife for our anniversary. I got her a dozen roses and two ducks. And if that isn't romantic, I don't know what is. I'm also not sure if my trick with the microphone inside my shirt will cut the wind noise, as I'm hoping, but let's just forge ahead and keep going here. All right. Now, you're all going to write little persuasive papers this week, and you're going to make the mistakes that inexperienced writers do, and I'm fine with that. I'm clapping for that. And one of the first things you're going to be tempted to do is make an ungrounded claim, okay? An ungrounded claim is where you just go on a rant, right? You just proclaim something that might not be true. And not last year, but the year before, I had a couple of pretty good examples. I pick up a paper, actually I read it online, and the student comes out swinging saying, oh, America's the drunkest country on earth ever. Well, really? Well, I Googled it, and it was Luxembourg, actually. And the next paper, same pile, a few papers later, I get to a paper, and the student says America's the fattest country on earth. Well, that's Googleable too. We're not even close. It's American Samoa. So here's the thing. When you're arguing along, there's a thing I want you to understand, and that's causal reasoning. What you're trying to do is create a proof, and the Greeks were obsessed with this. The Greek word for proof was pistis or pisteus, and they were really interested in that. They were interested in the moment where somebody could go, "Wow, you just proved it. It's over. Let's go on to something else to talk or, fret about." Aristotle was interested enough in creating. There they are. I can see them. They're back. Those are my ducks. Aristotle wanted to create a little machine that would create proofs, and he invented one. It's called a syllogism. If you've ever messed around with geometry, you know all about it, right? In geometry, you're trying to create proofs, and we do that with language too. And I'm going to tell you about it, and then I'm going to ask you to turn it into a repressed memory, because the syllogism to a non-logician is clunky and unnecessary, but it's neat to know how it works. And it's because it's Aristotle. Syllogisms always have a major premise, a minor premise, and then a proof. That's what kicks out. And the one I always use is the one that comes from Aristotle's rhetoric. And I always pick out some young man in the room. But since there isn't one, there's just me. I'll just launch it. Premise A, all men are mortal. Oh, let's just put the ducks in it. All ducks are mortal, premise A. Premise B, Sergeant Pepper, that's the name of that duck. Sergeant Pepper is a duck. Ergo, what's the proof that kicks out? Well, Sergeant Pepper is going to die someday. He's going to be a former duck, a deceased duck. Okay, that's clunky. That's never going to work. You're not going to get a syllogism into prose in that way. However, you guys you have to understand this. You need to be able to control something called an enthymeme. An enthymeme is like the little brother or the cousin of the syllogism. An enthymeme, a syllogism, again, definition-wise, three-step chain of reasoning that leads to a proof. The enthymeme is different. The enthymeme is a two-step chain of reasoning that leads to a proof. So, you have to be able to do this. I'll give you the example of my big boy when he was little. My big boy's, no, my little boy. My big boy's first word was mom. But my younger son, Will, when he was a baby, I was there. His first word was mar, mar. And I was feeding him one day, and I'm like, whoa, you just spoke, you just achieved language. That's because he was like a Freudian little id, okay? Every time we went into a store, he'd say, Daddy, I want a treat. And I'd switch it out, and I'd say, I know you want a treat, little man, but you don't need one. Oh, I do need a treat. That's just a kid making a rant. However, and imagine this coming out of a 3 or 4-year-old, if in those days he had been able to say, you know what, Dad, did you see me eat that crap lunch that you just fed us? I ate it all gone. And Dad, did you see that I cleaned my room? And Dad, we just went to Dr. Winter last week, and our teeth are awesome. There's no cavities whatsoever. And Dad, do you know how short life is? Can you just get me a little candy bar? Right, now we're getting somewhere and we're arguing. Enthymemes always have a cause-effect word in them. And the most common one, there's a bug about to crawl on my lens. The common word is because. Because of this, you should do this. Because of this, you should hire me. Go have a cup of coffee with me. Let me into your school. You have got to be able to do that, or you're not going to be able to reason your way out of a paper bag. Other examples would be, due to the fact that, or because of this, on account of this, given this, right, you should feel this way. You have to be able to control that simply because it's important and it's basic and small, medium, and very important rhetorical situations. It's basic cause-effect, and you just got to be able to do it, and I know you'll work on it. All right. All right, Riverland and Long Prairie Gray Eagle. We've had a demonstration. We've had a poem. We've seen some ducks. We've talked about nature a little bit, and we've had at least some kind of comment on the difference between syllogistic reasoning and enthymemic reasoning. I want my life to be an enthymeme. I almost forgot to mention that. In other words, could you let me into heaven because I did this, this, and this, and this, and didn't do these things? I love enthymemes, thinking of myself as an enthymeme. I also love enthymemes that are invisible, where people are induced to do something, and they're not even aware that they've been persuaded. Okay, let's end with the king. Let's end with Shakespeare. Look at this baby. This is the Riverside Shakespeare, you guys. For many years, I stood in classrooms and exaggerated a little bit. I said, Shakespeare wrote over 1 million words. Well, who's counting? But he did get close. I think it was about 870,000 words, 2,200 of which he made up himself. I don't know how he was possible. I do not know how this man was even possible. He created 80 or so major characters. You know their names even if you haven't read their plays. Macbeth, Othello, Lear, Richard III, on and on and on. And he created 800 minor characters that are also more human than we are. How did he achieve that? And some of those characters don't even get names. Like in Richard III, Murderer 1 and Murderer 2. They don't even get names. One of my favorite characters in Shakespeare also doesn't get a name, and that's the gentleman in King Lear. He, like us, lives and dies in a few lines, and he's gone. And I just want to enter into the play and give that guy a hug, which would be weird if an English major suddenly appeared on the landscape of King Lear where the stage is littered with bodies and started hugging the gentleman. That ain't going to work. Get thee gone, I'm sure Kent would say. But I want to take you to a particular moment in Julius Caesar. Any speech would do. And I'll put it on the screen and I'll read it to you, and that's how we'll end our time together today. The situation is basically this. Caesar's been killed. He's been executed. Assassinated is the word, actually. And, you know, Shakespeare, I forgot to mention, I want to start talking about Shakespeare now. Shakespeare never invented a story. Almost no one knows that. He wrote 39 plays, 152 sonnets, plus the miscellaneous poetry like The Rape of Lucrece. But with the plays, the story already existed. He just grabbed it and retold it, vamping up certain characteristics, tamping down others, and every time making it better. Same's true of Chaucer. Chaucer never invented one single story. In those days, those guys didn't even think that way. So what Caesar does is Shakespeare does, sorry, I'm misspeaking all the time. He takes the play Julius Caesar and he changes it in certain places. For instance, Shakespeare has Brutus stabbing Caesar in the chest, in the heart. Well, that's not exactly how it happened. Plutarch, who was there, who saw it, actually wrote down in his history that the knife went into his head. The first blow from the dagger went into his skull. And there's no headache like the kind of headache you get when you got a knife going into your head on the floor of the Roman Senate. And there's chaos, okay? It's a political situation, and somebody's got to be in charge. There's a phrase that I love that I've actually got memorized in Latin, and it's true too. I'll say it in English first, and then I'll say it in Latin. Nature abhors a vacuum. And I'm getting close to saying something political here, but let's stick with Shakespeare. Nature abhors a vacuum. In other words, nature does not like a vacuum. It wants something to fill it. The Latin phrase is naturam abhorrem vacuum. And somebody's got to drive the truck, okay? Caesar's dead. This is the funeral. And he's in his coffin. And in the chaos, two people rise to speak. The first is Brutus, who gives an okay speech, and for a split second he's in charge. But then Antony stands up and he pulls the trigger on this, you guys. and when he's done, it's over, because Mark Antony paid attention in high school and college and he knows how to use the figures of speech, unlike Brutus. And I simply, before I read it to end our time together today, and just study this, I'll focus on the last few lines. I saw this staged at the Guthrie about 25 years ago, and it was really sensational because Mark Antony, it was a great production. He was this really tall black dude that moved like water. I mean, the dude was just an athlete. And when it came time for this moment, for the funeral oration, I went to the play curious, how are they going to stage that? Well, they had the coffin in the center of the stage. Everybody else clears out. And they had Mark Antony and Brutus ascend these huge, wide ladders. So they were way up in the air, facing one another and facing the coffin. And again, Brutus' speech is okay, but it's over when Antony says this. You know at least the first line. I'll read it to you. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under Brutus and the rest, under leave of Brutus and the rest. For Brutus is an honorable man. So are they all honorable men. Come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious. And sure, he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. Well, this is just a tour de force of the figures of speech. So look at the last lines. You got so many tropes, figures, and schemes going on here. You've got the idea of repetition. You've got Brutus and brutish. Brutish, what kinds of beasts are those? Lions and tigers and bears? Thanks for saying oh my. Is his heart in the coffin? No, it's beating in his chest where it belongs. But this is just a demonstration. This is an example of what William Shakespeare was truly capable of. Our species will never produce a writer like him again. It was good to see you today, or as I keep saying, good to be seen. I'll try to be more timely with the new video. We only have 2 days to be together this week, Monday and Wednesday, and then comes MEA. So you'll have Thursday and Friday off to catch your breath, and I will hopefully get the next video again up earlier tomorrow. God bless you guys. Hang in there.